Bruce Lee and the Taekwondo Master, a lesson in humility and speed. The dojo was alive with the rhythmic thud of feet striking heavy bags, the sharp crack of wooden boards snapping under powerful kicks, and the occasional grunt of exertion from the students. It was a typical evening at the Seoul Martial Arts Academy, one of the most prestigious Taekwondo schools in South Korea. The Grand Master, Choi Min-ho, a man in his late 40s with a reputation for being as unyielding as he was skilled, stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, observing his students with a critical eye. Then, the door slid open. A slender man in a simple black tracksuit stepped inside, his presence immediately drawing attention. His dark, almond-shaped eyes scanned the room with quiet confidence, and though he was shorter than most of the students, there was an undeniable intensity about him. The students paused, sensing something different. This was no ordinary visitor. Choi Min-ho frowned. "Who are you?" he demanded in Korean, his voice sharp. The man bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "Bruce Lee," he replied in accented but clear Korean. "I was passing through Seoul and heard of your dojo's reputation. I wished to observe." Choi's frown deepened. He had heard of this man, some American Chinese martial artist who had been making waves in Hong Kong with his strange, hybrid style. Rumors said he was fast, but Choi had seen many fast fighters. Speed alone did not impress him. "Observe?" Choi scoffed. "This is not a zoo. If you wish to learn, you must prove yourself first." Bruce Lee's lips curled into a faint smile. "I understand. But before I do, may I ask, what is the essence of Taekwondo?" Choi's chest puffed slightly. "The essence? It is power. Discipline. The art of the foot. We strike with the force of 1,000 horses. We break boards, bricks, and bones with a single kick." Bruce nodded thoughtfully. "And what of speed?" Choi smirked. "Speed is nothing without power. A fast kick that does not break is useless." Bruce's smile widened just a fraction. "I see." Choi gestured to the center of the dojo. "If you wish to prove yourself, then show me your best." The students murmured, forming a circle around the two men. Bruce Lee stepped into the center, rolling his shoulders, his body loose and relaxed. Choi took a fighting stance, his legs coiled like springs, ready to unleash a devastating roundhouse. "Begin," Choi commanded. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Bruce Lee moved. It was not a kick. Not a punch. Not even a block. It was a blur, a flicker of motion so fast that the students barely registered it. 1 second, Choi was standing tall, confident. The next, his head snapped back as if struck by an invisible force, and he stumbled, his hands flying to his face. A trickle of blood seeped from his nose. The dojo fell silent. Choi's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. "What was that?" he barked, wiping the blood away. Bruce Lee stood calmly, hands at his sides. "You said speed without power is useless." "I disagree. Speed is power, if you know how to use it." Choi's face twisted in anger. "You cheated. That was not a proper strike." Bruce shook his head. "I did not cheat. I simply moved faster than you could see. If you wish to call it a trick, then call it that. But the result is the same." Choi's fists clenched. He had been humiliated in front of his students. His reputation was at stake. Again, he growled. Bruce sighed. "Master Choi, there is no need for this. I did not come here to fight, only to learn." "Again," Choi repeated, his voice trembling with rage. Bruce nodded. "Very well." This time, Choi was ready. He launched himself forward, his right leg whipping around in a spinning hook kick, a technique designed to shatter ribs. Bruce barely moved, just a slight shift of his weight, a tilt of his head, and the kick passed harmlessly by. Before Choi could recover, Bruce's hand shot out, fingers extended in a precise strike to the solar plexus. Choi gasped, doubling over as the air left his lungs. The students gasped in unison. Bruce stepped back, giving Choi space. You are a skilled fighter, Master Choi. But you rely too much on power. Speed is the ultimate weapon. It allows you to strike first, strike last, and never be hit. Choi straightened, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. You dare lecture me? Bruce's expression softened. I do not lecture. I only speak from experience. I, too, once believed strength was everything. But then I learned that true mastery comes from adaptability, from understanding that no single style is perfect. Choi's eyes burned with humiliation. You think you are better than Taekwondo? Bruce shook his head. I do not. I think Taekwondo is a beautiful art. But no art is complete. Even the greatest masters have something to learn. Choi's pride would not allow him to back down. Then prove it. One more time. If you win, I will acknowledge your skill. If I win, you leave and never return. Bruce hesitated, then nodded. As you wish. Choi took a deep breath, centering himself. This time, he would not underestimate his opponent. He would strike with everything he had. He exploded forward, his left leg snapping up in a lightning-fast front kick. Bruce sidestepped, but Choi was ready, his right hand shot out in a knife-hand strike, aiming for Bruce's throat. Bruce twisted, barely avoiding the blow, but Choi's knee came up in a brutal knee strike. Bruce barely managed to block, but the force of the impact sent him stumbling back. The students cheered. Choi had him. But then, Bruce's hand moved. It was so fast that no one saw it. One moment, Choi was grinning in triumph. The next, his head snapped to the side as Bruce's fingers flicked his earlobe hard. Choi yelped, more from surprise than pain, and instinctively reached for his ear. Bruce was already 3 steps away, hands raised in a placating gesture. Enough, Bruce said calmly. This is not a battle to be won. It is a lesson to be learned. Choi's face burned with shame. He had been outmaneuvered, outthought, and, worst of all, outsped. In front of his own students. The dojo was silent. Then, slowly, Choi bowed. Not deeply, not in full submission, but enough to show respect. You are faster than I expected, Choi admitted grudgingly. Bruce bowed in return. And you are stronger than I expected. That is why we should learn from each other. Choi exhaled sharply, then turned to his students. Class dismissed. We will resume tomorrow. As the students filed out, murmuring among themselves, Choi approached Bruce. You said you came here to observe. What did you learn? Bruce thought for a moment. I learned that Taekwondo is not just about power, it is about precision. About timing. About understanding your opponent's rhythm. And I learned that even the greatest masters can be surprised. Choi nodded slowly. And what did you teach me? Bruce smiled. That sometimes, the smallest movement can change everything. Choi extended his hand. Stay. Train with us for a week. I would like to learn more. Bruce shook his hand. I would be honored. As the 2 men walked toward the back of the dojo, one of the younger students turned to his friend and whispered, Did you see that? He moved like lightning. The friend nodded, eyes wide. And Choi laughed at him first. The first student grinned. Yeah. Then Bruce said, Laugh more. And 1 second later, bam. The 2 boys laughed, but their laughter was filled with awe. Because in that moment, they had witnessed something rare, the meeting of 2 great martial artists, where pride was humbled and wisdom was born. And Bruce Lee, as always, had left his mark. The awakening of the shadow. The 7 days that followed were one of silent transformation. Bruce was not a guest, but a catalyst. Choi, the master of impeccable rigidity, began to bow to Bruce's fluidity, not in submission, but in recognition. Each morning, before sunrise, the two met in the inner courtyard of the dojo, where the air still held the freshness of the night. Choi taught precision of blows, economy of movement. Bruce responded with the unexpected, turning defense into attack with a hip turn, a shoulder deflection. On the third day, one of the older students, a man named Park, observed the exchange with disdain. "He is fast, but he does not understand the true art," he muttered to a group of disciples. "Choi-sensei is wasting time with circus tricks." Bruce listened. He didn't react. But that afternoon, during a Chisaw practice, Wing Chun's sticky hands exercise, Park openly challenged him. "Show me what you got, Guilo." The word, loaded with contempt, hovered between them like a blade. Bruce smiled. "Do you want to see? Then come." Park attacked with a sequence of direct, precise, deadly punches. Bruce didn't block. He disappeared, a sidestep, a spin, and suddenly Park was off balance, Bruce's fist hovering an inch from his throat. The entire dojo held its breath. "You fight as if art were a cage," Bruce said, lowering his hand. "But it's a river. You can try to contain the water, or learn to swim with it." Park didn't respond. But that night, he was seen practicing alone, repeating Bruce's movements until his muscles burned. On the fifth day, Choi received an unexpected visitor, a tall man, dressed in an impeccable suit, accompanied by two bodyguards. It was Kimura, a businessman with connections in Seoul's underworld. He walked into the dojo like he owned the place, his leather shoes squeaking on the mat. "Choi-sensei," he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I heard you have a new student." "A foreigner." Choi maintained his posture, but Bruce noticed the tension in his shoulders. "Bruce is my guest. He's here to exchange knowledge." Kimura laughed. "Knowledge? Or is he teaching you to be weak?" His men laughed too, a hollow sound. "You know, Choi, my associates don't like foreigners messing around where they don't have to. Especially when they start changing things." Bruce took a step forward. "What are your associates afraid of? That people will learn to think for themselves?" The bodyguards moved, but Kimura raised his hand. "Careful, Guelo. Seoul is not Hong Kong. Here, the rules are different." He turned to Choi. "Think about it. A respected dojo, or a pile of ash." They left as abruptly as they arrived, leaving a heavy silence behind. Choi took a deep breath. "Kimura is not a man who makes empty threats." "Then don't let him do them," Bruce replied. That night, Bruce didn't sleep. He walked through the streets of Seoul, observing the shadows. Kimura was just a symptom. The real problem was fear, the fear that the new would corrupt the old, that change would be a threat. He had seen this before, in Hong Kong, in the United States. Men like Kimura didn't understand that the martial art was not about control, but about freedom. When he returned to the dojo, he found Choi sitting on the patio, a half-empty bottle of soju. "You shouldn't be here," Choi said. "Kimura will come back. And he won't be alone." Bruce sat down next to him. "I know. Then why stay?" "Because someone needs to show them that they have no power over what they don't understand." Choi laughed, a bitter sound. "You are a fool." "Perhaps." Bruce picked up the bottle and took a swig. "But at least I'm a fool who doesn't bow." The attack came at dawn. Bruce was alone in the dojo, practicing Taolu, a sequence of movements that flowed like water, when the doors slammed open. 4 men entered, all with wooden sticks. Kimura was behind them, smiling. "I thought you liked fighting," he said. "Let's see if your words are as quick as your feet." Bruce didn't move. Waited. The first man attacked. Bruce dodged, spun, and the attacker's baton hit his own companion's knee. The second man charged, but Bruce knocked him down with a roundhouse kick that sent him flying against the wall. The third tried a high blow, but Bruce ducked and hit him with an elbow to the stomach, knocking the air out of him. Kimura watched, the smile fading. Stop it, he shouted at the last man, who was hesitating. Bruce didn't stop. He approached the last assailant, disarmed him in one swift movement, and held the baton to his throat. Tell Kimura he's right, he said, his voice calm. The rules are different here. Because now he knows he can't touch me. Kimura stepped back, eyes wide. This isn't over. No, Bruce agreed. But you lost today. Choi arrived minutes later, attracted by the noise. He found the dojo in disarray, Kimura's men groaning on the floor, and Bruce standing in the center, breathing calmly. You're crazy, Choi said. Bruce shrugged. Sometimes. Choi looked at the fallen men, then at Bruce. They will come back. I know. Bruce grabbed a towel and wiped the sweat from his forehead. But now they know it won't be easy. Choi sighed. What do you want me to do? Teach them, Bruce replied. Not just fighting. Thinking. Questioning. Martial art is not about beating others. It's about beating yourself. Choi was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. I am going to try. On the 7th day, Bruce left. Choi accompanied him to the train station. The younger students watched him from afar, now with respect instead of curiosity. Park, the student who had challenged him, bowed his head in farewell. Are you coming back? Choi asked. Bruce smiled. Maybe. But the lesson is already here. Choi extended his hand. Thanks. Bruce squeezed her. Thank you. For reminding me that even masters can learn. The train whistled in the distance. Bruce climbed aboard, and as the locomotive began to move, he looked out the window. Choi was still there, standing on the platform, watching him leave. And then, as always, Bruce Lee disappeared into the crowd, but not without leaving his mark. Because some changes don't need words. They just need a moment. And that moment had already arrived. The legacy that endures. The train picked up speed, taking Bruce away from Seoul. Outside the window, the city lights merged into a golden blur, as if time itself was speeding up to catch up with their departure. He leaned back in the seat, his fingers drumming lightly on the wooden armrest. It wasn't the first time I'd left a place like this, with the feeling of having planted a seed, but not knowing if it would sprout. But this time, there was something different. Something deeper. Maybe it was the weight of Choi's eyes on the platform. Or the way Park, once arrogant, now carried a shadow of humility. Or maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in years, Bruce didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Not even yourself. The train stopped at a smaller station, where an elderly man climbed with difficulty, carrying a worn leather suitcase. Bruce stood up to help him, and the old man nodded his thanks, his wrinkled eyes shining with gratitude. As he settled in next to Bruce, the man pulled a crumpled newspaper from his pocket. Foreign fighter humiliates Korean master in public challenge, the old man read aloud, pointing to a headline with a blurry photo of Bruce and Choi in the schoolyard. They say he taught a lesson in the true spirit of martial arts. Bruce chuckled softly. Spirit? The old man continued, shaking his head. In my day, martial arts was about survival. Not humiliation. Bruce crossed his arms, watching the man. And what do you think I taught? The old man closed the newspaper, thoughtful. That even the strongest can be broken. And that the weakest can become strong. He looked at Bruce with sudden intensity. But the real test isn't what you do in the ring. It's what you do after the audience leaves. Bruce didn't respond. The train jolted, and the old man fell asleep shortly after, his head lolling to the side. But the words kept echoing in his mind. Seoul, 1 year later. Choi's school was no longer the same. The courtyard where Bruce had fought now had training marks on the ground, concentric circles, like those used in Jeet Kune Do, and wooden posts for precision drills. The younger students, once scattered, now moved with silent discipline, their bodies flowing in movements reminiscent of water and lightning. Park, now with shorter hair and broader shoulders, led a group of beginners, correcting postures with a patience that no one expected from him. Choi was sitting in his office, reviewing notes in a notebook. The pages were filled with sketches, punch diagrams, notes on economy of motion, even a hastily scribbled quote from Bruce: "Don't pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to face a difficult one." The door opened, and Park walked in hesitantly. "Master, the inter-school tournament is in 2 weeks. The students are ready, but..." He bit his lip. "But I don't know if I'm the best to lead them." Choi looked up, surprised. "Do you think you are not worthy?" "It's not that." Park lowered his voice. "It's just... I remember what he said. That true strength isn't in winning, but in knowing why you fight. And I'm still not sure I know the answer." Choi closed the notebook slowly. For a moment, he was silent, remembering the last conversation he had with Bruce, months after his departure. A letter, sent from Hong Kong, with just 3 words: "Keep breaking down walls." "Bruce didn't come here to give us answers," Choi said finally. "He came to remind us that questions are more important. And you, Park, are already asking the right question." Park took a deep breath, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Los Angeles, 3 years later. The Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute was packed that night. Students of all ages trained on the mat, while Bruce watched from the corner, arms crossed. He had changed since Seoul, his hair was shorter, his muscles were more defined, but his eyes still carried the same intensity. Now, however, there was something more to them. A calm. A boy of about 12, thin and with glasses, approached shyly. "Sensei. I saw the film you made. The one about the dragon. And I wanted to know if what he does is real." Bruce smiled, remembering himself at that age, full of doubt and fire. "What do you think?" The boy hesitated. "I think it's real. But sometimes it seems impossible." Bruce crouched down, bringing himself to the boy's level. "Impossible is just a word people use when they don't want to try." He pointed to the mat. "Do you want to learn?" The boy nodded, his eyes shining. Bruce held out his hand. "Then start by breaking a wall. The last move." Years passed. Bruce Lee never returned to Seoul. But his presence remained in Choi's students, who spread his lessons to dojos across Korea, in Park, who one day opened his own school, teaching not just scams but philosophy, and even the old man on the train, who, without knowing it, had been part of something bigger. And when, in 1973, the world lost Bruce Lee, it wasn't just the screens that felt his absence. It was the thousands of students who, without ever having met him, carried a piece of his voice within them. Because some lessons don't die with those who teach them. They simply become part of the air that others breathe.